Welcome to E Squared Emporium for all things AP Psychology. Today we will be looking at 1.3a neurotransmitters. So add this somewhere to your homework. I didn't leave a space for you to leave the definition, but a neurotransmitter is a chemical messenger that produces a change. These chemicals are stored in the terminal buttons of our neuron in the synaptic vesicles, so at the very end of the axon, at the very end of the neuron. And when they release, it determines how we feel. Neurotransmitters tell us if we're happy, if we're sleepy, if we're in pain, if we're drunk, if we're sad, if we're in love. So neurotransmitters determine a lot of how we spend our day. Now there are three types. We're only going to focus on two. So the third type is a neuropeptide. It's been removed from the AP test. So we're only going to focus on two types of neurotransmitters. Exciters, which excite the system. They cause the neuron to fire. It's like hitting the gas pedal. And when we start talking about drugs, those are agonists. Agonists are the drug exciters. But for neurotransmitters, we say exciters. And inhibitors. Inhibitors, they inhibit the ability of the nerve to fire. They're like stepping on the brake pedal. And again, when we get to drugs, we will call this an antagonist, but they're inhibitors for neurotransmitters. They have a key-lock relationship, and what we mean by that, it's literally like putting the key in the lock. The dendrites contain receptor sites for the neurotransmitters, but only certain molecules will fit certain neurotransmitters, like the way that a key fits a lock. So there's only one that'll take serotonin. There's only one that will take dopamine. They can't fit into every one. So I think of them like Legos, like a little Lego system. So the exciters, as you can see here, the exciters will fit in perfectly. The inhibitors are the brakes. The inhibitors come in and they sit there and they put the brake on. And when we talk about putting drugs into this area, it's like putting the wrong coin into a soda or a candy machine, if you've ever done that. And it just gets stuck in there and you can't get the soda or the candy, but you also can't get your coin out. It's just stuck there. So this is how drugs mimic our neurotransmitters, and they sit in the space and they take up the space, but they don't do any of the good things that are supposed to happen there. We're going to look at all of these neurotransmitters, and we're going to look at the chart on the back. So acetylcholine, which we call ACH, it's an exciter. It is found where the neurons meet the skeletal muscles. When the body moves, a flood of ACH will trigger the muscle action. This is a part of arousal, attention, memory, and motivation. Now, if ACH is blocked, then the muscle cannot contract. We're going to look at some examples of that. A lack of ACH has been linked to Alzheimer's, and we'll look more at that in class. Curare is a poison from a frog in South America used by the native indigenous tribes there. They use the frog poison to put on their tips of their hunting darts or hunting arrows. And when they hit an animal with this poison, it occupies the ACH receptor and it blocks and instantly basically freezes the animal in place. The animal can no longer move. They're unable to move their muscles. They're paralyzed or unable to run away. And then they're pretty easy prey to catch. So this is an example of ACH. Another example is botulin. Botulin, you might know that as Botox. Botulin is used for a lot of medical reasons, more than just into the facial muscles. But the reason why people look so surprised constantly in their face, it smooths out the wrinkles, but it also won't let you have any emotions. It paralyzes the underlying facial muscles. Now, we also see botulin from improperly canned food, and if you eat that, it'll block ACH and also cause paralysis. And we talked about myasthenia gravis, sorry. And we talked about this earlier, an autoimmune disorder. And this causes the immune system to make antibodies that will block or destroy the receptor sites for ACH. So you can't pick up any ACH because those receptor sites have been blocked. And eventually your muscles get less and less signals. They get tired, you get weak, and so on as the immune system mistakenly attacks healthy tissues. But it's a ACH disorder. The venom of a black widow spider is also involved with ACH. This is when we're flooded with ACH. You actually get violent muscle contractions, you can get convulsions, and possible death from the venom of a black widow spider. Moving on to dopamine. Dopamine is an inhibitor. So the function is motor movement and alertness. But a lack of dopamine is associated with Parkinson's. Parkinson's causes tremors. It's basically the death of nerve cells that produce dopamine. You may know Muhammad Ali, Michael J. Fox, many famous cases of Parkinson's that we can look at. Now, too much dopamine is being linked to schizophrenia. So if we can solve that link, maybe we can someday solve schizophrenia symptoms. And there's Muhammad Ali. So here's Michael J. Fox. You might know him as an actor. He was in Family Ties, Back to the Future, Teen Wolf, Spin City. He still does movies. He was in The Good Wife recently, and he's created a research fund to try to help figure out the dopamine link to Parkinson's. And here's an article that was published in Nature just a little while ago that is finally linking dopamine to a critical role to curing schizophrenia. Now, one of the problems with just giving dopamine to a patient is dopamine cannot cross the blood-brain barrier, and that is there to keep the brain safe from unwanted chemicals. So we have to use something called L-DOPA. L-DOPA is it's the natural raw material that can actually get past the blood-brain barrier, and the brain can then convert it to dopamine. We can kind of sneak it through into the system that way. Let's talk about serotonin. Serotonin is involved in mood control. We think of serotonin as happiness. The opposite would be depression. Serotonin inhibits behavior, including our emotions, and serotonin also assists us in sleep. If we don't have enough serotonin, then we have depression, and we'll talk about Prozac and what that does. So Prozac is an antidepressant. It's an agonist. It blocks serotonin reuptake, which means there's more serotonin floating around in your cerebral spinal fluid. There's more serotonin floating around in the synapse. We call drugs like Prozac SSRIs, and that would be important to know. It's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So what does that mean? It means it is blocking, it's inhibiting serotonin from the reuptake process in the neurotransmitter. Okay, so that's what it's doing. So these antidepressants are great treatments for depression, anxiety, personality disorders, insomnia, and we'll talk more about them in class. Norepinephrine is for wakefulness, arousal, memory, learning. Not enough norepinephrine can lead to depressed mood. We see norepinephrine around stress. When we talk about an EpiPen with allergies, it's either epinephrine or norepinephrine that we're typically using when we're talking about having some sort of reaction. GABA is an inhibitor. GABA is found throughout the central nervous system. It's involved in anxiety reactions with amino acids. The lack of GABA can cause seizures, tremors, and insomnia. So if you're not sleeping well at night, you need to take more GABA, the doctors will tell you. And people who have seizures and tremors may need to also take more GABA. You can actually get it as a supplement now, but I would let your doctor recommend that. Endorphins. Endorphins can both inhibit in that they block pain, but they can also enhance in that they make us feel good. So a little bit confusing there. They are produced by the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus during any type of excitement, roller coasters, exercise. When people talk about getting a runner's high, they literally are getting a runner's high. It is similar to a drug high, and people can get addicted to that endorphin high. It's the natural opiate of the body. When they say get high on life, they mean endorphins. So it produces like an analgesic sort of effect. So you get this great sense of well-being. It can be a natural fever reducer. It can be a pain regulator. It actually is released during certain types of acupressure and acupuncture as well. So glutamate is an exciter. It's the principal exciter in the brain, and it impacts memory. It also is involved with amino acids. Now, too much glutamate overstimulates the brain. It can give you horrible migraine headaches, and it can give you seizures. If you've ever had a problem with MSG, monosodium glutamate, right? That's glutamate, and it's in a lot of our frozen foods. When you get frozen foods from the grocery store, you have to see if they have MSG. And a lot of takeout foods have MSG. So if you've wondered why you get a headache after certain foods, it could be MSG. And I want you to add to the bottom of the chart, I want you to add substance P. Substance P, it didn't fit on the chart, but add it to the bottom. It is a neuropeptide. Neuropeptides are kind of that third category, and it acts as a neurotransmitter. So it's found in the central and peripheral nervous system, and these are the things that it does. You don't have to write all of this, just maybe write the main parts in blue. It's going to impact the immune system. It's going to help with bone and cartilage healing. It's going to help with our stress response. It's going to help with seizures and arthritis and inflammatory diseases, inflammation. So that's substance P, and there's a diagram at the bottom about substance P, and it's also in your textbook. And now you're ready for part 2, the endocrine system.